What happens when law, business, and life collide? Each week on Lead Counsel, your host Tom Tona will take a deep dive into topics related to the law, the business of law, and life. There will be insightful discussions with industry insiders, experts, and thought leaders making significant contributions and meaningful differences in their fields of expertise. Tom is the founder and managing attorney at TonaLaw. He has been a practicing attorney since 1994 and the leader of TonaLaw since it opened in 2001. The goal of this podcast is to provide you with free information on law and the business of law, and to give you actionable tools related to each of these areas. Now, here's Tom.
All right, welcome to the Lead Counsel podcast. This is your host, Tom Tona. I'm here with Juliet, my co-host, and we have a really special guest today I'm super excited about, Ryan McKeen. Ryan is the co-founder of the Connecticut Trial Firm, a leading law firm in Connecticut, and he's an avid tech guy. And man, welcome, Ryan. How are you?
I'm doing awesome, Tom and Juliet. Thank you both so much for having me on this morning.
Of course.
So I don't fanboy much, Ryan. And I don't. And you and I think you're actually younger than me. If I had to take a guess, I'm 54. How old are you?
43.
Yeah, man. So you're like 11 years younger than me. And I don't fanboy much. But after seeing what you did on the monster verdict that your firm took, and hopefully we can talk about it, the $107 million verdict, I instantly was impressed. I instantly was fanboying over your firm because knowing what it takes to take a verdict of that magnitude. Listen, first of all, I've never taken a verdict of that size, right? So instantly I'm like, wow, that is special what you did. But then hearing the backstory on another podcast or whatever, but I do know what it takes to have so much conviction and the sheer courage of what you did and your firm, right? The trial attorneys and you as the leader. Man, I just got to give you props. Like that is unbelievably impressive. I am super impressed by that. And I turned into a fan of yours because of that.
Well, thank you so much. And I don't think that we're any different than a lot of trial lawyers out there who are just trying to fight the fight for their clients, trying to get some measure of justice against large companies. And it doesn't always work out, but this time it did. And I'm happy about that.
Yeah. And I know you've talked about it on other podcasts, but I would love for you to kind of go into the story of Mikey, right?
Mikey
was his name?
Yep.
Mikey. And because I never get tired of hearing it. And B, you went into some granular detail about the level of disbursements you laid out, all of these different things. So take it away. Tell us how you go from putting it out into the universe to becoming a 9-figure player, man. Like that's the club you're swimming in, man. That's some rarefied air. So take it away, man. I'd love to hear the story.
All right. So the story really begins for me. I worked as an associate at a general practice firm. And one of the things I was drawn to was plaintiff's work. I love doing plaintiff's work. I love fighting for people. I love the efficiency. I love not billing hours. And what happened is I started gaining bigger plaintiff's cases, some wrongful death cases and things like that, that really, I was like, what do I do with these? Like I've done small car accident cases, but now I've got death cases. And so I said, I can refer these out or I can learn how to do these. I want to learn how to do them. And so I started studying like David Ball and Rick Friedman and Don Keenan and Jerry Spence and all the legends. I read everything I could get my hands on for them. And I started training at Keenan Trial Institute or Keenan Ball College at the time, and really just trying to learn and become excellent at the craft. And it was my belief that the only way we could get any sort of justice, like we didn't have a huge volume of cases, or I didn't have a huge volume of cases. And so for me, the ability to take a $30,000 case and work it up to a $90,000 case, well, suddenly I had three $30,000 cases, like the equivalent thereof. And so there was an economic reason to just want to do it and get good at what it is that we were doing. And we also understood that from the very beginning, that trial was our only leverage. And if we were ever going to get justice for our clients, we had to credibly be able to take a trial and get results. So that's sort of where it begins. But in 2017, my partner Andrew Garza and we started doing traction and EOS, which I know, Tom, you're a big fan of. We did our vision work, and we did the EOS traction organizer, which you can download for free. Nothing spectacular about it, but useful. And we said, look, what do we really want? And we said, we want to be the best trial firm in Connecticut. That's what we want to be in 10 years. But Gino Wickman, in smart advice, says, like, that's not a good enough goal. It has to either happen or doesn't happen. Looked around on some websites and we're like, a $10 million jury verdict. Like, that puts us in the conversation about being maybe the best. And so we set down $10 million jury verdict. I'm not sure we had a case worth $100,000 at the time. This is March of 2017. And it's just me, my partner Andrew, and I have a 9-hour-a-week paralegal at the time, part-time paralegal. And in September of 2017, we meet Mikey Cruz. Mikey Cruz had 1,300 pounds of light bulbs. Philips North America light bulbs fall on him while he was working at a warehouse picking an order. And he was paralyzed from the belly button down as a result of this. And we said, look, boy, this is, you don't know. We didn't know a lot at the time. We knew it was obviously very serious as he's paralyzed. We didn't think it should have happened based upon what he told us. And then we started digging into the case and we're like, okay, this really shouldn't have happened. And really, we ended up building our firm to support this case for the 5+ years it took for us to get it to a jury verdict. And we're still fighting it today. We had to get a lot better at a lot of things. I guess that's sort of like the general background of how it happened. We had to build the business to support the case.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack in this, right? So I remember exactly where I was. I was going into a business meeting to meet one of my collection clients. And I'm listening to you on this podcast. And you're like, we put out into the universe in the VTO, the Vision Traction Organizer, that tool you're talking about, that we want to take an 8-figure verdict. And at the time, had you taken any verdicts at all?
Yeah, we had taken some verdicts, but I mean, we're talking like $50,000 car accidents. I mean, we're not talking like we lost some, we had won some, nothing, no 7-figure verdicts, no 6-figure verdicts.
How crazy is that to go from a 5-figure verdict, journeyman type of verdicts, right? Like I always say, I'm a journeyman. I've taken verdicts. I tried cases in my career, probably about 20 to verdict, I think at this point, but I'm a journeyman, right? Like I never rang the bell for the 8-figure verdicts, but man, listening to you, I'm like, he's just a normal guy doing extraordinary things. I mean, the guts that it takes to do what you did and center your whole firm around it. Like that's an all-in kind of mentality, right?
Well, when you meet somebody like Mikey Cruz, who, I mean, I was talking to him yesterday about the Mets, and I mean, he's become like a brother to me in many ways throughout this. And you meet somebody like that, and they're in a hospital bed like he is, and his whole world has been just crushed in every which way. And you sign up that case, and if you're a lawyer at all worth your soul, we made a promise to him that day, that we would do everything to provide him with the best possible representation that he could that would be possible. I mean, just best possible representation. Right. We will do everything. We will leave no stone unturned. And I think my partner Andrew and I know, that was a promise that we met, and we were going to keep to a man like that who was trusting us with his life.
Yeah. And it's funny. So because you take traction, I finally, after years of wrestling with it, we were able to figure out our vision. And my vision is fighting for what's right. And then we got into specifics of what we want to see occur. What does that mean? Like what is make the ideal client or whatever it is. So, I mean, I think that's why I love listening to you and this story, is because the amount of risk that you took on at the stage you were at, right? Like, were you financially flush at that point when you started this all out?
No, we weren't. And in fact, that led us to do things like just fortuitous timing. I went to my first John Fisher mastermind, like November of 2017. Jay Ruane and Seth Price were like, you got to go. And I'm like, okay, I'll go out to Chicago.
It's amazing, right? It's amazing.
And John was talking about advocate capital and the financing of case expenses. And it was something that we hadn't done ever, and it felt like a big leap. But as we looked about it and thought about it and knew what we were facing with Cruz, were like, look, we need this. And so we brought them aboard, and we were on board with them in January of 2018. And we were able to, early on in that case, retain amazing experts that helped make the difference and shape the course of the case from then on out. And we were able to box. We actually hired an expert. Get this. This expert had done consulting for Philips Signify, consulted with them on warehouse issues and warehouse safety and packaging issues, right? And he had told them, don't do this thing. He did not have an NDA, and he's the top guy in the country on this stuff. And so they never actually got a packaging expert. They're like, I think this was the guy they would have wanted to use, but we had him because we got him early. I think we got him before Philips even knew that there was a claim. So those things can make a ton of difference. And they cost money. But, the way I look at it in life, and I don't, you say we're like courageous. We always believed in this case. Like we always believed. I think what's interesting about it to me is from the day we met Mikey Cruz in that hospital room, the case never changed, really. It never, what he told us played out all the way till to today through 45 depositions and 12 days of trial and endless amounts of motions and things like that. What he told us was right. And we knew it was right, and we knew why he was right. And so we're like, look, there comes a time in anybody's life where it's like, are you going to play all in? Right. Are you going to do it? And for us, there was no question that this was like, hey, we're going to bet our futures, our firms, and everything. And I think the main driver for it wasn't $100 million or wasn't anything like that. It was just like, that was our promise to Mikey. And like, we wanted to be able to look ourselves in the mirror and say, we did it. We like mission accomplished, Mikey.
And man, you did. So let's get granular for a second. I remember the staggering number. What was the amount of disbursements the day you got to trial and you were ready to open?
When you say disbursements, Tom, are you talking about like settlements or what happened?
No. So let's talk about first, what was the level of financial investment made by the firm, either through advocate capital or other money that you had into that case before you opened that day?
Yeah. Okay. So we had about $350,000 into the case at that point. But a few things had happened. About mid-June of 2022, we had a mediation where it was supposed to be 2 days. It only ended up being 1 day. There was multiple parties to this case. So there was the landlord who owned the racks. There was a company that provided a temporary worker who essentially used a reach truck that caused the lamps or the light bulbs to fall on Mikey. So we had multiple defendants in addition to Signify. And at that mediation, they had offered us a combined global of $3 million. And that was like, and they're like, we're being generous here. And so, but what happened immediately thereafter that mediation was probably about a month later, the court made it very clear to us and the defendants that this case was going to be tried this summer, which wasn't actually clear to, I think, any of us at the time, though we were prepared for it. I don't know that the defendants were. And that caused, we were able to fortunately settle out with the landlord at the time several weeks prior to trial. And then the morning of opening statements, the spec, the employment agency and the employee settled out for $6 million. So, I mean, by the time we were doing opening that morning, I mean, it was a risk-free shot for us.
But you know what? It's not. And I'm going to tell you why. You had no idea that was going to happen, right? So I'm picturing you at a poker table and you're sliding $350,000 into the pot. And then at the last minute, two people fold. But man, come on, listen, the other thing people have to understand is this. I know Advocate Capital. That is recourse funding.
Yes, it is.
You're on the hook for every dime of that $350,000. I think you said $350,000. And so had that case gone adverse, you and the firm are on the hook for that, right? It's not non-recourse. It's recourse.
It is recourse. But you know what, Tom? You said like you couldn't have known this. I can text you this stuff. I can text you. I have receipts. I told my friends, I'm like, we're going to hit $100 million. Sometimes I'd hedge it and I'd say 50 million. But I'm like, we're going to hit these guys for $100 million is really what I would say to anybody. Why did I say that? Because we had run, my partner Andrew led up, Alexa Mahoney as well. We'd run about 12 focus groups on this case. And we knew we knew what was going to happen. Nobody else did. We knew. And then as I sat there at counsel table and I watched it unfold, I was like, oh no, they are going to hit him for $100 million. And so I think we had done more work in that aspect than any other case. And again, there's not that there's no risk, but we had felt very, very confident in our position as to how this was going to play out. And in fact, we talked with a juror afterwards, gave us like a Zoom call for an hour, and exactly what he said was exactly what the focus groups had said. Like no surprises whatsoever.
And that, just for anybody that's an aspiring trial firm or litigation firm, that you were working very closely with Andrew's trial school, I think it's called. What's Andrew's trial service that he runs where they do animations? They do, you know who I'm talking about,
yeah,
right?
Andrew Finkelstein.
Yes,
man, what a legend. I don't think we get there without him. And I can talk to him. I mean, what a mensch of a human being he is. He did trial animations for us, Total Trial Solutions. And then he helped us at the very end of the case. I saw him at a conference in Vegas, and he's like, Ryan, you've got to get your team on the phone with me. I'm going to do an hour with you. So it's Saturday morning, hour call with Andrew Finkelstein. He's like, what you guys don't know, and I'm going to teach you, is how you ask for $100 million.
Well, that's awesome. I keep trying to play it in my head. Like, how do you stand in front of them and do that ask? I mean, can you share it? Is it something you could share?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the first thing is that we knew that focus groups weren't going to ever punish us for anything we asked for. Mikey Cruz, I mean, to the extent that there is a perfect plaintiff, like he is like the most lovable guy, and like the most terrible thing happens to him. And he's salt of the earth. Like, I mean, this is a guy who makes like $18 an hour. Like, he escapes gang violence in Hartford, like doesn't get involved in the gangs, works up doing dishwashing jobs. It's just a family guy. I mean, like, you couldn't script like sort of a better plaintiff than Mikey Cruz. And it's just, if you've spent any amount of time with Mikey Cruz, you'd love him. And the jurors did, and we knew that they would, and his family as well. Just, we had the plaintiff, and we knew that Phillips was a bad actor in this. Like, in fact, the reason that this happened was that they wanted to save $5 in 5 minutes. Like, that's how little it would have taken to fix this. And so you have this huge, like, battle, that's the disparity of this, like, perfect plaintiff and terrible corporate defendant balancing out. And we knew we were on the side of right in this case. And we had them technically, like, we had every I dotted, every T crossed in this. And we knew that there was no amount the jury was going to punish us for asking for. We could have asked for $1 billion from them. Okay. And so this is also an interesting one. We didn't specifically ask for $100 million either. They had disclosed to us an insurance policy of $20 million. And we had hoped to get the policy or breach the policy or whatever. That would have put about $28 million total in Mikey Cruz's pocket, which is like, would have been a home run for,
absolutely,
would have been a complete win. And so as we do our closing, we go through the whole thing. And the jury, like, you don't have to, Andrew Finkelstein's point to us was, closing is not about facts, it's about the story, and it's about the narrative from those facts. And so we just, like, we didn't have to tell them that he was paralyzed. We didn't have to tell them what happened. It was about, like, the import of those things. So we focused a lot on very high level things, because Andrew said to us, look, if you start telling people something they already know, he's like, you lose credibility, you erode credibility. And we really focused on that. And then when we got to the numbers, we threw out a big number first. And we said, look, in coming here, we have to ask you for money. We told you we're going to ask you for money. We told you we're going to ask for a lot of money. But we have to come up with some number as to how we got there. And so we said, look, there's no amount of money that I would take to trade places with Mikey Cruz. However, but I have to ask you for something. And I came here and I thought about what's fair. I thought, is $150 million fair? Nope, $150 million, that's too much. I'm not going to ask you for that. 140, still too much. 130, too much. 120, too much. 100, look, I'm not saying to you that I'm not going to ask you for $100 million, but if that is something that you feel is the right amount, I encourage you to fight for it. I'm not saying it's unreasonable. I'm not going to ask you for it. And then we went down and we finally said, we're going to ask you for $60 million. That's what we're going to ask you for. And here's why. If I told you this case was nothing more than this horrible boxes fell on him and he had to have this horrible back surgery and he was walking around, I would have no problem asking you for $5 million. And then if I told you somebody could never have sex again for the rest of their lives, I would have no problem asking you for $5 million. And so we worked backwards to build up to the number of 60. And ultimately they came back, they found $100 million. They assessed 10% to parties that we had released, which was $90 million onto Philip Signify.
That's amazing. That is truly amazing. Like, again, I've looked at all the press on it. I've read about Mikey, and you went to battle. And I do think it took tremendous courage. I just think that you're a very humble, kind guy. You're always very humble. I know law firms that would still be plastering this every single place they could pay to plaster this from a PR perspective. And I'm like, man, he's super humble about this massive win. I know there was some press on it, but again, anybody that's listening to this, and I know it's mostly attorneys that listen to this, if you're taking personal injury cases, to me, that's the mindset you have to have. And it's funny because we have a diverse inventory in our personal injury silo, right? But we do have wrongful death cases. We do have brain injury, brain damage cases, brain injury and brain damage cases. And the way you're describing your relationship with Mikey often happens to me. I get obsessed with certain cases where I go, this client's just being done wrong and I'm going to fight for what's right. I don't care how big the checks are I have to cut for the experts I have to do. And that's the right thing to do, right? Like, so it's just amazing to hear the story, and the relationship you have with him is amazing too. I think that's awesome. Like, you didn't just do the verdict and then you never talk to the guy again.
Can I say too, I mean, what happened here was infuriating, and there are racial elements to this unquestionably, and I think that drove us a lot. Our guy rented a place in South Hartford and Puerto Rican, and again, we're $18 an hour in a warehouse, just salt of the earth guy. And what happens is basically the only thing he had in life to support himself was his body. And they took that away from him, and they took away his pride, a very proud man. And what happened is, there's no question in my mind, they were trying to wait him out. They were trying to hope that he died. And that enraged us because he would sometimes have to choose between getting medication and eating. And like, he lived in squalor, complete terrible apartments. His nephew was shot one night at a drive-by shooting on his porch. And Mikey was in bed and he had to like throw himself on the floor because he was paralyzed. I mean, just they put him through 5 years of absolute hell. Absolute. I can't imagine what Mikey went through. And the thing that saved Mikey, I think, in some dark times was he wanted his day in court. And there was metaphorically, it was so restorative to him to stand up to Phillips and to stand up and to have, I'm going to choke up, but like have his day in court. And when you're dealing with whatever your life's problems are, and you talk to Mikey Cruz on the other end of the phone, you know his problems are immensely worse. And he's positive, and he's like, I need my day in court. I mean, if you're a lawyer and you're not like, I'm going to fight for this guy, like just turn in your law license or go do tax law or whatever you're going to go do, because that has to touch you as a human.
Right. I think, it's funny because last night I'm on one of the Facebook groups. I won't say which one, but there's a guy that's asking questions about personal injury cases. And I was kind of losing my mind. I wanted to jump in. I won't jump into the fray on it, but I was like, dude, you got to take these cases to trial. You got to push these carriers. You're accepting the first offer. You're setting a precedent for plaintiffs nationwide that's okay. You can't do that. Like you said, you got this client. If you get that call, like, all I want is my day in court, because think about it. The guy had his life altered forever. You got to do what the guy wants. You got to give him his day in court or deliver a $50 million settlement and say to him, Mikey, listen, as much as I want to give it to you, once they breach this certain threshold, the risk, right? You do that risk reward analysis, right?
Mikey would have taken the policy. Mikey would have taken their $20 million policy against Phillips. He absolutely would have. And they knew that. They only ever offered him $1.5 million. So there was no choice. There was no risk. I mean, the chance of a jury returning a verdict of less than 1.5 here, in our opinion, was like 0.001. I mean, just there was no risk.
So you know what's funny? Okay, so I do these DISC tests. I'm sure you're familiar with hiring tests, whether it's a DISC or something else. I've got this anger component to me that it takes a lot to get me there. I'm a martial artist, whatever, and I'm in control of my emotions. But man, hearing the stories about what these carriers do and seeing it firsthand, I'm like you. I will use the word fury, and then it's game on. I actually get to the point with the carriers where I go, we're not settling the case. I don't care. Now it goes from 1 million to 5 million because the fact that they do what's called, and we know what that's called, the death gamble. A guy like Mikey sitting in a wheelchair with a wife, with this case pending, his whole life hanging in the balance. And instead of doing the right thing, it's a corporate decision behind closed doors. Listen, we're going to get hit, but there's also the odds he doesn't make it to trial. And now their case gets cut fractionally to 10%, 20%, whatever it is. It is infuriating. And I love that you use the word fury because I think that's why I don't know if we've ever even met in person, but every time I hear you speak, every time you post something, I'm like, man, that guy's my brother. I know what we share. I know that emotion that I share with you. Like, that's what drives you to say, I'm all in. Here's 350,000. I'm pushing it to the center of the table and let's rock and roll. And I love that. And I'm thanking you on behalf of attorneys everywhere that should be doing exactly the same thing and saying, look, man, that's the standard. You got to be willing to put your money where your mouth is. This is not just a transactional business when it comes to people's lives. It's not. And bravo to you, man. Bravo to you and your partners.
Well, yeah. I mean, Andrew was lead counsel on this and led it up as I sort of did a whole bunch of other things for the firm. And I mean, I was very involved in Cruz as well. But Alexa Mahoney did a fantastic job, ended up getting the highest loss of consortium verdict for Mikey's wife in state history of $10 million for her. And Andrew Ranks, phenomenal trial lawyer at our office as well. So it took four lawyers on this for years.
Oh, dude, the amount of hours you guys, I mean, do you know the amount of hours you put in? I know you track that stuff. Do you know the amount of hours you put into that case?
No, we don't. It reached a point where this was a calling. Like this was like, we don't care. Like like all gas, no brake, and let's go.
Oh man, I love that.
It just didn't matter. Like nothing mattered because like I'm really emotional. Like we made an oath to our brother. If it didn't work, we were going to be able to look Mikey in the eye and say, brother, we put it all out there for you. We put it all out there with you. It didn't work. But I don't know. I mean, like, I'm getting choked up just thinking about.
No, listen, man, but that's what makes you in that rarefied air is because that's a really special thing. And as somebody who, and I'm not talking about the soft tissue stuff. I'm talking about when I have a client, and I had a similar experience with a client, and I became obsessed with his case. So obsessed that I gave myself a blood infection from working the insane hours I was working because I said, this guy's brain damaged, right? He needs somebody to provide for him for the rest of his life at bare minimum to get all the money that's there. And I was up against 3 other plaintiffs firms and probably 8 different adjusters all opposing me at one given time. That obsession that you had and the clarity to just believe in your soul, like what's right is to go all in. And so kudos to you. And of course, it's going to be an emotional thing. You did what you had to do. And you know internally, probably the only person who knows better is your wife, the sleepless nights involved for you behind every decision you made. So man, again, I don't fanboy much, Ryan, ever hardly, but with you, brother, I can't wait to meet you in person. Like I really can. I can't wait to meet you in person because you're a special dude and your partner. Let's not leave out Andrew for a second.
No.
Like shifting for a second, I think I've analyzed your business and I think what makes you really special as a business is, and you tell me if I got this right, you seem to be the business end of things, whereas Andrew is the technical end of things, right? Because you have to have that combination to do these amazing things. Like you have to figure out, hey, how are we financing these 350 in disbursements, right? While Andrew's figuring out who's the 45th deposition we need. Now, that doesn't mean there's not interplay, right? There's probably interplay between the two of you, but in analyzing it, I've said to build the firm you've built today, the Connecticut Trial Firm, right? Do I have that right?
Yeah,
Connecticut Trial Firm,
yep.
right? Right. And great job on the branding, by the way. But to build that to what you are today, you need both. You need the business end of it and the technical trial expertise running simultaneously towards the same goal.
Correct. And your analysis is spot on. And obviously, we run level 10 meetings and we just did our quarterly. So, Andrew is involved in all of that, but my focus is much more on the business side of things and on higher level strategic things. Cruz was probably the last case that I will ever try or be trial counsel on and work, which is fine by me. Maybe not. I keep an open door there. I love doing the work in that respect. But my time is better used doing other things. Andrew is amazing at just he's a trial junkie and he lives litigation and depositions and things like that in a way that I think maybe I once did, but I think my interests have shifted a little bit because you need to, in order to do great things, yes, you need to be great at both because one can sabotage the other and you really need a whole lot of support because, in a plaintiff's practice, right, you worked at for 5 years. We're still not paid. This is up on appeal right now.
Right.
And we got our money back from expenses and things from the settlements with the other parties, but we're still not paid. And so you've got to keep the lights on and you've got to be able to hire great lawyers like Alexa Mahoney or Andrew Ranks to support the trial team. You've got to get a great paralegal like Carla Ochoa. You've got to build the whole base behind them. You've got to convince them to work for you. You've got to keep them employed. You've got to do a whole lot of work. And you've got to bring in other cases as well, because you can go, I don't know how much I understood this at the time, but you could go bankrupt on a case like Mikey Cruz trying to get it there.
Remember the movie with John Travolta? It was a book we had to read in law school, and I can't remember the name of it now. Civil Action. You had it at the tip of your tongue. It's exactly that, right? He took on the cause. He was a true believer. He was obsessed, and he literally went bankrupt. And that's why, again, the genius of your business model is you're brilliant, right? I follow you. I know that you know business, and the fact that you're at the EOS level of things, you really understand the business side of it. But yeah, you could go broke with a case like that, right? So the fact that you're thriving while this $90 million portion of the verdict is up on appeal, that says a lot about your business acumen, right? Which is incredible. I know that you did a lot of work with a coaching entity. I think you still do with Lawyerist, right?
Lawyerist was something I was a member of a number of years ago. Stephanie asked me to stay on and help coach. And I'm still with them because I have 3 firms that I absolutely love working with. And so I work with them for 3 hours a month as a coach, but I don't take on anybody else there. Right. I don't have the space for it. But for coaching, we use Fireproof, Mike Moore's firm, John Nakazel, Kate Nakazel. Both amazing to work with. And they've really helped us in a lot of ways because there are barriers in business. And as we sort of grew, maybe the toughest barrier for us was about 25 people. Because that's really when the sort of small firm family vibe started breaking down. And boy, did we need to get into being an actual business and all that entailed with metrics. And we hired HR, we hired a director of accounting and data analytics and making some hires that are business hires and structuring financially. And just a whole host of things became immensely more complex when we got to about 25 people.
Yeah, I found that as well. I think we're at 41, whatever it is. And I was talking to my coach yesterday and I'm like, man, they got to build a program. But EOS is ideal at that 25 level because there's not many firms. So EOS or the Fireproof stuff, they're basically the same, right? Fireproof is traction for law firms, right?
Gino Wickman, coach Mike Morris and John Nakazel. So they're all buds. And so yes.
Right. So we're doing EOS. It's the same thing, it's same principles. But I will tell you that, we just finished our 3rd EOS session 2 days ago. And we're sitting around a table and it's like amazing because he said, okay, where do you see yourselves in 10 years? And the 5 people on my leadership team, we all had the same goals, the same vision, the same financial goals, all of it. So I think that what I see with your firm is the magic of when it all clicks, where you have the litigation piece, the trial piece, I should say, very separate from litigation is the trial piece, and the leadership piece in you. It's very crystal clear as to why your firm is thriving the way it is as fast as it is. So again, kudos to you.
And for anybody out there, none of this, there's nothing exceptional about me or about Andrew or about anybody really on this team. We're all pretty normal people, good lawyers, good people, work hard, all of that. But a lot of people can check those boxes. But I think the thing that, if you're out there and you're listening and you're like, look, you're me 5-6 years ago, and you're like, what is $100 million verdict, 35 people? I don't know how I'm going to pay my rent next month. I think the thing to think about, and this doesn't get discussed a lot in business, is get excellent at whatever it is you're asked to do. Get excellent at trial work. Learn from great trial lawyers. There are no secrets. There are no secrets. If you want to get great at business, learn from great business people. Pay them. Go to their things. Read the books that they read. Have dinner with them. And get excellent at what it is that you're asked to do. And if you do that, the money will follow.
And also be crystal clear about what you want to do, right? So if somebody says, I want to be a trial person, I'm like, okay, I will pay for the entire KTI setup for you, but just be understanding, this is a very significant time investment, and everybody wants to be Andrew. Are they willing to do what Andrew did, flying across the country to every KTI seminar across the country or Finkelstein seminar across the country? It's not enough to look at the end product and say, I want to do it. As big as the investment was, the time investment for Andrew to go from a $50,000 verdict taker to a $100 million verdict taker, of course it looks easy. It was 5 years of his blood, sweat, and tears doing it. So kudos to Andrew as well. And so it goes to what you said. What you're being tasked to do is, if you're being asked to try cases, then be the best at it, right? If you're the business end of it, I made the conscious choice, I want to do the business end of it, right? So, but I'll invest in people to do the other stuff, right? Same as you. But it's also you got to be in aligned with, do you want to do it? People say they want to do it, but then are they willing to? I'm sure Andrew studied from 5 o'clock at night till 12 o'clock in the morning, many nights studying the trial stuff that's online in KTI.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
I mean, he worked himself up to being KTI Trial Lawyer of the Year, and now he's faculty. We have two. We have Alexa Mahoney, who's also faculty there. So these are people who nights, weekends, got on planes, read things, live this stuff. And the truth is that it works. There are trial lawyers of all shapes and sizes. Runs the whole gamut out there, Tom. But you've got to a successful trial lawyer is they put in the work, and they do the work, and they follow the playbook. I think more than anything, trial is about execution. It's not about being smooth. It's not about being slick. It's almost like you're making a recipe and you're following the directions to a T and you're executing on that recipe. And look, there's some art to it as well. Don't get me wrong, but it is a lot of execution.
I agree. And I follow your entire firm on social media, and we'll talk about that in a second, but I follow everything that you guys put out. I see the results, right? It's consistently saying, this is the value you're going to pay us, so we're going to go to trial, take them to trial, and continually sharpening the sword. I see the stuff Andrew puts out. He talks about the most important thing in a courtroom is credibility, right? From the client and from the lawyers. Just to sum up the whole $100 million verdict conversation, I know law firms that are not too far from where we practice that would have settled this case for the $1.5 million. And that infuriates me. So that's why we need people like you putting the message out there, right? If you're going to do that, you're in the wrong field. You're in the wrong space. Go trade stocks, do something else, but don't bargain somebody's life for $1.5 million that a firm can take $100 million verdict on. You're over your head. You shouldn't be doing that.
Absolutely.
So,
refer that case out. Refer it out to somebody who will. There are
lawyers. You'll make $10 million on a referral.
There are trial lawyers out there in every community who will fight the fight, walk the walk, and just refer that case out. If you're not willing to look somebody like Mikey Cruz in the eye and mean it, refer. Just refer. You're doing a service to yourself, your client, and the bar as a whole.
I agree. So let's talk about something else, because I said to Jules before we started, I'm like, look, this one I want to go an hour because I'm fascinated by Ryan and his firm and everything they're doing. So another area that I feel very kindred with you is your love of technology and in the embracing of the social media that you're doing. You're very active on TikTok. I see you all the time on TikTok, Twitter, and LinkedIn. I'm sure you're on all of them. What are the challenges for you with everything that you're doing with regard to the technology as it currently stands and the platforms you're currently on? Like, what are you currently wrestling with from that perspective?
I mean, for marketing, whatever, I actually think it's just never been a better time to produce content. It's never been easier. It gets easier every single day to engage, to do content. I mean, look, even like right now, I mean, this is going to sound great for whoever's listening. I don't have to drive down to go see you in New York. Like, we could do this on Zoom. Like, it just gets better and better and easier to do. So I think it's an exciting time to create and connect with people. And I think it's an incredibly valuable use of my time when I sort of think about things I should be doing and things I should not be doing, connecting with people, thinking about ideas, figuring out what's out there in the marketplace. Like, those are incredibly valuable things that I can bring to my firm. And I just think, like, for anybody out there, the biggest things you can do is just be yourself, to be honest, to not try to be somebody that you're not, and just share your story, share honestly, wins, losses, whatever, and connect with people who do the same.
For sure. I think it's funny too, because for such a ferocious litigation firm, you're like the nicest guy. You're like the kindest, nicest guy. And it's funny because, again, I've been doing martial arts for years, for decades actually. And the most ferocious, I do Brazilian jiu-jitsu, for the most ferocious fighters are the nicest guys because they have nothing to choose. The nicest women are the ones that have the black belts around their waist and literally can put you to sleep in 15 seconds. And I kind of feel like that's you, man. You and your firm are the black belts of what you're doing because you got nothing to prove. You're doing it because it's your purpose. I think you said earlier, it was about a calling. Mikey's case was a calling for you. That's just special, man. Thank you for doing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. I mean, there's a whole lot of spine to me and to the firm and everything. And there's a willingness to fight for sure. But, you can't live in a constant state of that. Like, you're just going to talk about a way to burn yourself out. So I think it's the ability to know what is important and to focus the energy when it is important. It's sort of like the ability to, if you're a runner, maybe to sprint when you need it because you can't sprint all the time.
Right. You have to ebb and flow with your energy, right? That's definitely important. So I'm going to ask two questions to you. One question that I ask everybody is, if you think back over your career, what was probably one of the biggest, I call them needle movers. What was one of the biggest needle movers where you noticed an inflection point for yourself in your career or your professional life or your business life, whatever you want to call it?
I really think that I had some early success. Not early, but I mean, I settled a motorcycle death case for like $2.25 million. And I think the inflection points were before that, committing to me to investing my own money when I remember going to a Don Keenan, David Ball thing in Washington, D.C., where I told my wife, like, hey, I want you, I'm putting this out there because it's probably going to cost me like $4,000 to go to this thing. And I want you to know that we may not be able to take home money this month. This is the thing. And she's like, no, I believe in you. Get on that plane. And I believe that you're going to add to that case. And I did. I was probably able to add up $1.5 million in value onto that case from what I learned there. So it was really being able to make the investment into myself. And again, really after that, like in 2016, 2017, where I really started investing in learning about business and learning about the business of law from Lee Rosen and the Rosen Institute, John Fisher and John Fisher's mastermind. And even at that time, I mean, getting on a plane and going to Chicago, I remember Andrew and I had talked about it. And it was like, okay, we got some settlement in, and it was like a last minute decision because the case had settled. And then I had the money to get on the plane. And then I met like-minded people, Bill Umansky and just others out there in the world. And they showed me different things. And then it was up to me to go home and to execute those things. So I think like the biggest inflection point was investing in my skills, investing in those things. I think that there's no way that the firm exists or Mikey Cruz happens without significant investments in myself. And Andrew, Andrew, same thing.
I love that. I often say, because I hear a lot from people, I talk about coaching all the time. And I coached with Atticus. They were my coaches I still coach with one of the coaches, but for over a decade, right? And I've invested $300,000, $400,000 in coaching, right, over that time. I tell people when they tell me it's too expensive, I'm like, you're drinking an $8 coffee, and yet the highest ROI you will ever get, I just did a post on this on LinkedIn, the highest ROI you will ever get is investing in yourself. It doesn't matter what position you are in a law firm, in a business. And if your boss won't pay for it, I guarantee you 12 months later, you're going to make that money back if you just invest in yourself. There's no such thing as too expensive, right? So I'm 100% a fan of what you just said. I knew I was kindred with you on a lot of levels. I love that. So the last thing I'm going to ask is a favor. After this appeal is done, assuming there's no confidentiality agreement, man, I want to get you back on. I want you to talk about the appellate process and the other wrangling that's going on, if you can. If not, I completely understand. I'll have you on anyway. We'll talk about something else.
Well, Tom, I'd love to. And I think most meaningfully to me, it's like, this is going to sound strange. When we settled, there were two moments. It's like when we settled with them on the morning of trial, the other defendants, like I just started sobbing because I knew Mikey was taken care of. And I was talking to him yesterday, and he's able to buy a house, and they've had builders, and they're making it all accessible for him. And he loves to cook, and he's going to have accessible stove and whole nine yards, right? And so he's talking to me, and he's just like, Ryan, because we talked about this throughout the whole case, where it was like, I go see him in these apartments, and I mean, just terrible apartments. And he'd be like, I'm going to cook for you. And so he's talking, and he's like, okay, we're going to be in by August. They'll be all done. And the whole firm's coming over, and we're having a cookout. And and it's like, man, you know what? Like, whatever happens on appeal, like, happens.
Right.
Mikey Cruz can sleep in a bed, have a house, have his grandkids over for Christmas. If he wants to fly first class to Puerto Rico, he can do that.
You did your job.
And
you did your job, man.
And so, yeah. And you know what? Justice is not letting these people get away with it. And justice is fighting for every penny and making them pay every penny, which we have appellate lawyers that by the way, I mean, it's another thing. Bring aboard the right people. Like, we hired appellate lawyers months before trial to position ourselves for trial, because we're like, let's kill them in the courtroom. And they're like, hey, guys, you may not want to push this one. May not want to win this.
Right.
So
I mean, talk about, that's also a significant investment. That's not a small thing to gloss over, man. You hired people for this case, specific purpose of sitting in the courtroom to make sure that it was appeal ready, because you knew if you were successful, it was going up on appeal.
We knew we were going to be successful. I think the only thing that we didn't know was if Phillips would, after we closed and whatever, come over to us and say, here's $20 million. Let's end this damn thing. That's what we didn't know. And the jury returned a verdict in like 3 hours. So that window was not a very long, not a very big window, but we knew that we were going to hit them. And we knew when that happened that we needed appellate lawyers to be there, because the last thing we wanted to do was hand over an appellate transcript to appellate lawyers and then go, what the hell did you guys do? Why did you make this argument? Why did you convince the judge of this? Nope. Come on. Let's come into the courtroom and do what you're good at and prepare the record, make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to do. And they see things very differently than we see them.
Yeah. But that was brilliant of you. And man, I can't wait to listen. You said it perfectly. I was going to say, I can't wait to hear the outcome of the appeal, but what's going to happen is going to happen. And you won. Like, no one can take that away from you. I know that was something that you said, this will set the bar. I paid very close attention to that on the podcast. You said, I wanted something. Look, you can make 8 figures a year. A lot of law firms are doing that. No one can take away that verdict from you. You rang the bell and you did what Steve Jobs refers to as making a ding in the universe. That day, you made the ding. You impacted Mikey's life in a way. No matter what happens on appeal, No one can take it away from you. And Mikey will never, ever feel like he didn't have somebody really, truly fighting for him. So my man, you are a hero. I see you choking up. You don't have to say anything, but you are a hero. You and Andrew and Alexa, your entire firm did what you had to do, man. That makes you guys heroes. And in my book, that's why I'm a fan.
Well, Tom, I'm a huge fan of yours, and yeah, let's. I know I think we're supposed to have lunch during and then COVID hit or something. So let's get that on the calendar, and I look forward to seeing you.
Yes, and we will connect at one of John's masterminds. I'm planning on signing up for all of them. I know he just came out for the date. I'm signing up for all of them, so I'm sure I'll see you there. And we can have dinner or whatever. I'd love to go out to dinner with you. So, my man, thank you for coming on. I mean, it's been an honor. It really is, and I don't say that a lot. It has been my honor having you on, Ryan.
Well, Tom, thank you so much.
All right. Listen, man, you have a great weekend. Jules, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Ryan, thanks, buddy. And I'll let you know when this is coming out.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you both.
I'll text you. Bye. Bye-bye.
Wow. That was such an incredible story.
That was probably the most emotional podcast, not only that I've ever done as the host with you, but just heard in general. Like, talk about such a genuine guy doing amazing, extraordinary things, and to be so humble. Like, dude, don't you feel emotional right now?
Yeah, that was crazy. Listening to his story was definitely so inspiring as well.
I hope it was inspiring. I hope it inspires anybody listening to this, because there's a common theme you hear among the people I have on this podcast, 7, 8, 9-figure attorneys, right?
They're
where
also
they say,
invested.
Investing in yourself is the highest ROI.
Yeah.
Right? How many times have you heard me say that? So, I mean, dude, I'm emotional. I actually feel emotional from that podcast because I don't know many true life heroes. That cat and his firm, they're heroes. All right, listen, we're going to wrap this up. This is the Lead Counsel Podcast. My guest, Ryan McKeen, can be found if you just Google the Connecticut Trial Firm anywhere in Connecticut. They are the personal injury firm in Connecticut to go to. You heard him. You heard their core beliefs, their core values, and what they stand for.
And they are all over social media as well for anybody who wants to go look them up on anything.
Correct. You just put in Ryan McKeen. He's on Twitter. He's on LinkedIn. And this podcast can be found anywhere, Google, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, or anywhere podcasts are distributed. And if you took value from it and you enjoyed it as much as we did, leave us a 5-star review wherever you're listening. I'd really appreciate it. Man, that podcast took it out of me emotionally, Jules. I'm shot.
I know. That was intense.
All right, we out.
Bye, guys.